So first question I have for you, Mike, is how did you end up getting on to Kangaroo Island?
Well, back in the 1970s, I was working for a publishing house, and while I was working, I had an accident, broke my legs, and so I needed a quiet place to go, and I convinced the publishers that they needed a book on Kangaroo Island. So I went across there and started working on a book. But in the meantime, I met the community there. They were good people in that they would do anything to help you, but they expected you to get on with your own life, and I liked that. So I started working on the book for the publisher, and then I started working on the land over there for some of the different properties. And so as I was going across the land, I got to feeling for the people that had been there long before it was an island, because there was lots and lots of artifacts that were there. And so over the years, I was always interested in the cultural side of things. Then one time, Karno had come back to Kangaroo Island. He hadn't bought any land there yet, or didn't have a place there yet, but he was visiting, and Peggy and I met him there, and we just kind of struck up a friendship. So then when they were living on the island, Karno came by one time with a couple of books. He had a high school chemistry book and a high school physics book. And he said he'd read these and he pretty well understood them, but he said, if you look at this periodic chart here, which is all of the elements, he said they're like an alphabet. And he said that alphabet you combine and you make words. Those are compounds. I said, yep, you've read the book, you know what you're talking about. And so I said, what's physics? He said, physics, that's the grammar. So that started a conversation that went on for years, because he would say, I can read this land out here. I know the alphabet, I know the vocabulary, I know the grammar of the land in my culture. I want to be able to share it with other cultures. So that's how we worked. And at that time, Peggy and I were working all across Kangaroo Island, different parts of the country, mainly with a lot of the farm people. And so Karno started helping us, going out, because I said, look, as we go across this land, there's lots of history that starts long before the Europeans think of it. And so he says, yes. And so we started exploring that together, and that's what he was interested in.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. Now, what's your fondest memory of Uncle Karno?
Well, working with Uncle Karno for nearly a decade there on the island, there was lots of interesting situations. No matter how hard the jobs or how tedious the work, he always had a good sense of humor. And that was quite enjoyable, particularly when he was working with a lot of volunteers, which we worked with. And for many of these people, they'd never met an Aboriginal person. So it was a real opportunity for them to work with him. And they were fascinated with the stories that he would tell. And they said, these really aren't stories. This is an education to us, because he's interpreting the land around us. He's telling us a story in a way that it's alive. And so he was talking about why Kangaroo Island, or Karta, was important to Aboriginal people. And that's because they all used to congregate here long before it was an island. Back when you could walk from across what today is the Australian Bight, or you could walk across Bass Strait because of the sea level changes, and the people, for some reason, all congregated, were drawn to this land, which later became Kangaroo Island. And so he said that's why he welcomed all people who came there, because the land belonged to all of them. So we were often come across old campsites, artifacts, things like this, and he would share with the people how those were used and how they came about. And we would often go down where the ochre cliffs are, and the ochre was something that was traded across from the area Karta up here onto the mainland, and it traveled all over. And he would tell those stories of how ochre was important symbolically and medically, because he was good at not only showing cultural things, but practical day-to-day living things with nature. And so that was a big eye-opener for a lot of people, because they just thought of nature as a place they go to relax or just have a good time. So they didn't realize that it was a place that could feed you, could sustain you. And so that was a big eye-opener to a lot of people. And we would go out and we would gather plants. We would gather the shellfish and the meat. And in the different seasons, we would have the different food with those people.
Okay, Mike. Next question I have for you is, what does Rooch and Peggerlin mean to you?
It means coming together of all people. To begin with, the coming together of Aboriginal people together. When I say Aboriginal, my people are from the southwest of North America. Many of my ancestors cut their hair off one day and disappeared into Mexico. They weren't getting along with the colonial governments of the time. So I had my background, my family history was very similar to some of the histories here in Australia. So when I came here and started working with Karno, we shared a lot of similar backgrounds, and I found that very interesting. We could work together on that. Can you repeat your question there? Let's see.
What does Rooch and Peggerlin mean to you? But
right.
Also, we're just intrigued about which part of which nation did you come from?
I came from the Jicarilla Apache people, and they were in the southwest, southern Arizona, New Mexico, on the border with old Mexico, that country. So origin is the coming together of all of these people, and it's something that I don't find strange or difficult, particularly here in Australia, where basically the country is a blend of people anyway. It's just that it's a young country, and many of them haven't got used to the idea yet that they're blending. But that's the fact that they are. So to me, origin is just an extension of that blending and learning to share and learn from the land. It's getting, I think, probably more difficult for people today because more and more people are city orientated, and they've created a little bubble that they live in, the bubble of the city, which is an intriguing and magical place, but it's very disconnected from the world around us that we live in or that Karno lived in. And I remember his stories of when he was traveling overseas, and he'd gone to England to help bring some of the remains back of his ancestors, and he would be talking about running into some of the kids up there, skinheads, and they were kind of confronting him a little bit, and he, in his normal way, he just spoke right back to them, and they were kind of taken back from this fella talking. And next morning, Karno got up and came down from where he was staying, and they were all standing there waiting for him. And he said, what's happening? They said, you were telling us about your country. We'd like to share with you our country. And so then they all went off together. And he was saying, again, these were kids that were being shunned by their own people. But he said they were some of the best ambassadors that we met on the whole trip. So yeah, that was, I think, summed up what Origin was about too. You don't carry your prejudices out. You break them down. Yeah.